Shalom, Yasharallah. This is your brother Dawud from GMS Tampa Bay 07, coming at you with this in truth again. First and foremost, I want to give all praise unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Waharakah, Kadash, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that taught me this truth and that rule well. And salutation and much love for your Aki and pushing this truth and sincerity on the four corners of the earth. All right, I was looking through the news, man. There's a lot of stuff popping off in the news. Just today's only Monday, right? Over the weekend. And then so today, there was a lot of things that popped off in the news, and a lot of these things is chain reaction one after another, So, I was going to bring up this here article about the chemical attack over there in Syria, But, before I could even get that video up, and things like that, we have a different change of events, So, that's just how the spirit goes, Sometimes you have things planned out to do certain ways, and spirit just changes up, and none of these videos is what I had planned to do today, but this just was important in the news, and this is part of what, we're supposed to be doing, bringing out these here news articles and looking at the signs and the times that's going on around us, But nevertheless, this is going on to more of this exposure and the hypocrisy of America, okay? So there was a chemical attack over in a so-called chemical attack over in Syria over the weekend. All right, we'll read through the story, and which they'll break down a lot of this stuff. All right, so it says no trace of chemical weapons at alleged attack site in Duma, Russian military. A photo showing a child being washed after what the White Helmets and other anti-government groups in Syria claimed was chemical weapons attacks in Duma, eastern Ghouta, on April 7th. The Russian military says the photos were staged. All right, and so it was ironic that I came across this here article because I was reading it in a different article about the the same deal that that they didn't have any images, no real images. Well, not the images. They didn't have when they went to do the investigation, in which they'll talk about in here about the Russians actually did an investigation, But in their investigation, there was no patients and no hospitals that was suffering from any kind of chemical attack. There was no chemicals on the, I think they call it the Red Crescent, pretty much the Islamic version of the Red Cross or the Islamic State military. I forgot what they were called. But anyway, they went over there and was testing out the land and everything like that. And there was no signs of chemicals on the land, and none of the patients and none of the hospitals has any signs of chemical attacks, all right? And so, this is just one of the slight things I wanted to get into, which I believe it was in this here article here where they'll go into more about the investigation, But, on the other article I was going to do the video on, that was one of the things that stood out to me. They only had one line that says, about Russia doing an investigation. And it stood up to me like, this attack just recently happened, but then you see the retaliation, well, not the retaliation, but the how do you say, the preemptive move for retaliation from the American side or the Western side. You see what I'm saying? But there's no real investigation, okay? Just like when this happened a long time ago when Barack Obama was president, talking about that red line, if they cross that red line and then, this and that's going to happen, then next thing you know, there was a so-called chemical attack, all right? And before that they did any kind of investigation, America was ready to start rolling. But then they wound up doing I believe it was the Western side did an investigation, or somebody did an investigation, found out it basically came from the Western side, and, that story just died down, But, the Russians are doing due diligence, they're not just taking somebody's, they know how America get down with their propaganda and their fake news, They know how they get down with their false flags and things like that, And a part of while, it's important to bring these here stories out to get you familiar with your enemy, and how your enemy get down. Because Esau, the scriptures say Jacob is like the salt of the earth, We got a lot of flavor. And, to give you the analogy, when you're cooking with food, you can get a whole bunch of different types of flavor from all the different seasonings and flavors. So it's a bunch of differences, you see. But Esau is like that bland-ass food that you be eating with no salt. It ain't got no flavor. He only got one way of doing things. You see what I'm saying? Like and whatever he do, he always do it that way. He don't ever switch it up and do it a different way, So like for an analogy, if I don't know what kind of analogy I could give, but if you do something in one, it is a fucked up analogy, but you having sex, You know, Jake, we do it in different positions. We switch it up here, there, boom, boom, boom. Switch it up, do it this way, that way, you know, all in one setting. Esau, he do it the same way. I mean, I don't really know, but this is the analogy, you know. He always like it the same way, same positions, all at the same time, you know. No, I don't want no difference, nothing ever change up, you know. With him, he's just bland. He's just, you know, it ain't no flavor with him, you know. But, you know, so this is kind of good to be able to get to know who your enemy is and how your enemy get down, so you can kind of predict his next moves, you know. When you start seeing these so-called false flags attacks and these types of things like, oh, there was a chemical attack, now what we're waiting on is the speedy response of the so-called Western or the American side, all right? But if the other side don't step in, like with Russia and them doing this investigation, you can pretty much tell that the next thing's coming up is America's about to get exposed. And when they get exposed, things they like to do is just lash out over something different, you know? Or they're trying to hide something bigger in the picture. So these are the things that you should be looking for around these little things, you know? And a lot of these stories, like the chick that shot up the YouTube, you know, that's an irrelevant story. There's nothing important about that story. The important part about that story is to see the mindset of your enemy, what your enemy's his next move is. All right, that lady was insignificant in the shit that she was doing, but the things to pick out on that was she was being portrayed as a so-called religious person and a person who was angry from being censored with their speech. All right, and so when you put that into context, we, in their eyes, are so-called religious people who are upset about our speech being censored, you know? And so they're trying to get you pre-accustomed to dealing with the Israelites. You see what I'm saying? So that story that they was pushing with that is insignificant for what you would think that story is all about. That story has a way deeper meaning. But if you understand your enemy, you'll be able to see his tactics and how he get down. Like, all right, he about ready to start pulling the famine of the word is about to start coming because he's about ready to start pulling with the censorship on the YouTube, switching up his algorithm. Now you have this shooting and you blaming it on so-called religious fanatics, you know, over censorship, you know. So again, this is just, you know, good ways to be able to learn who your enemy is, all right? It says the Russian military has found no traces of chemical weapons use after searching parts of Syria's Duma alleged target by an attack. Photos of victims posted by white helmets are fake, Russian Defense Ministry say. Okay? And so they flat out coming out. It's like, you know, beforehand, they're like, well, we did an investigation, we couldn't find X, Y, and Z, you know? But now this is pretty much just like, man, this shit's fake, bro. You know, they just flat out coming straight, you know? They're not using these fancy high dollar college white people words and stuff like that. They be like, man, this shit fake, bro. Like, we finna go to war. Now, when you get to this point in time, you know you at the end. You know, they're not, you know, having the little circus show going on, you know, with this and that and so on and so forth, like how they was doing it beforehand. Now they just coming out with it blatant, you know. They know that the people's minds is already is geared up and ready and prepared for these types of things. So they just, you know, to the point of frustration of like, all right, another chemical attack, just blow them all up, you know. They getting you prepared for all these things, all right. Says experts in radiology, chemical, and biological warfare, as well as medics on Monday, inspected the parts of eastern Ghouta, city of Duma, where an alleged chemical attack supposedly took place on Saturday. The Russian Reconciliation Center for Syria said in a statement, jumping down, it says, the specialists found no traces of the use of chemical agents after searching the sites. The statement said the center medical specialists also visited local hospitals but found no patients that showed signs of chemical weapon poisoning. All these facts show that no chemical weapons were used in the town of Duma, and it was claimed by the White Helmets. The statement said, referring to the controversial civil defense group that was among the first to report about the alleged attacks. All right? So the Russians, they understand their damn enemy. They know how America's going to get down with their propaganda and all their lies and their deceit. So what do? First and foremost, they run over there, not necessarily Russia, but the opposing side, you know. These people, you know, like I said, they had the, let me see, who did they say did the investigation? I know that the Russians were investigating, but also some of the, I can't think of the name of them people. It was Islamic, that was in the other article. But nevertheless, these people from over in those areas, they started doing these investigations real quick and putting, how they said, putting the facts out there. You know, it's like, all right, well, y'all say this and that happened. Get out of your emotions. Where's the patients that are, you know, the victims of chemical attacks, you know? Where's the traces of chemical attacks on the ground, you know? None of these is there. You just got what you say is going on, and you got a video of somebody getting sprayed with a water hose, you know? And you know, the people in their emotions, they're like, oh, that's just so sad. We got to go over there and blow them all up, you know. But nevertheless, you know, and speaking on the hypocrisy of all this, this is coming from the same damn people who is daily, day after day after day, committing chemical attacks on its own citizens. What do you think chemtrails are? Okay, what do you think is the what do they call that? The lead that was in the water in Michigan and stuff like that. You know, what about all these different things? You know, about all these vaccines and stuff like that. You know, it's saying these are chemical attacks. You know, all these drugs and pollutants. America got all these people on opiates and stuff like that. You know, these are chemical attacks. These people ain't getting these goddamn. You ain't gonna find no damn drug house on the corner of the block making like medical grade pills and that type of shit like that, man. It's not gonna happen. These is coming from these scientists in these laboratories and stuff like that who know how to make real chemists. You ain't gonna find no goddamn crackhead that know how to put this shit together like that and not blow himself up, you know? These people know what they're doing. These are trained people doing these things, you know? These are the masters of chemical attacks, chemical and biological attacks on people, you know? But they have the nerve to sit here and have their nose in somebody else's business on a whole other side of the globe, you know what I'm saying, talking about some chemical attacks. But they ain't got no real proof, you know? We have major proof over here. Look at the people that's the conditions of the people here with the chemtrails and all these things going on here, you know? It says all accusations brought by the white helmets as well as their photos allegedly showing the victims on the chemical attack are nothing more than yet another piece of fake news in an attempt to disrupt the ceasefire, the Reconciliation Center said. On Saturday, some rebel-linked groups, including the White Helmets, accused the Syrian government of carrying out the chemical attack, allegedly affected dozens of civilians in eastern Ghouta town of Douma. The reports have already provoked a wave of outrage in the West as the U.S. and the EU rushed to put blame on the incident on Damascus and Moscow. Okay, so these are these false flags. This is how I get down. All right, America is the ones that's going over here either propagating or creating some fake ass news, blame it on whoever else, and get you with your emotions. Then you basically is accepting and down with them going over there and invading and bombing the shit out of somebody. If you don't remember that, go back to 9/11. All right, Iraq and Afghanistan, none of those citizens had nothing to do with that. But yet, right after that, hey, they blew up our shit, go blow up the whole goddamn country. And the Americans didn't even care about none of all of that, you know? Fucking pop-ups. But, you know, so, you know, this is, again, you learn the traits of your enemies, you know? You'll be able to see what kind of move he's going to make before he make his next move, you know? You better protect yourself, all right? It says, on Saturday, some rebel-linked groups, including the White Helmets, accused the Syrian government of carrying out a chemical attack that allegedly affected dozens of civilians in the eastern Ghouta town of Douma. The reports have allegedly provoked a wave of outrage in the West, and the U.S. and the EU rushed to put blame for the incident on Damascus and Moscow. U.S. President Donald Trump hastily denounced the perceived attack as a mindless atrocity and humanitarian disaster for no reason whatsoever, warning of a big price to be paid. All right, and so I mean we can keep going on down into this, but basically, you know, they kind of go into more of this stuff going on, you know. And if you go further back into it, I think they're going to go into it here about the airstrike from Israel. It says. Yeah, right here. So this was earlier, you know, and you start to see these things go, you know, it's turning into a hot war, you know. We're getting out of these proxies, and now it's becoming a hot war, you know. Russia and America both trying to get out of the way of their proxies they're fighting through, and, you know, Russia calling America flat out, you know. So Syria and Russia have dismantled accusations and called reports of fake news aimed at helping the extremists and justifying the potential strikes against Syrian forces. In the very early hours of Monday, Israeli fighter jets targeted Syria's T4 air base in Homs province. The Russian Defense Ministry said Israel has not commented on the strike. Earlier, a number of Israeli officials have called on the U.S. to strike Syria as a response to the chemical attack. All right. And so, as far as the Israeli attack, as far as I know on the Israeli attack, it hadn't been so-called confirmed other than off of Twitter and things like that. But more than likely, that shit did happen. But, and it was basically in the response of, some so-called missiles coming over towards Syria or towards Israel, and then Israel coming back and actually doing some damage over there, And as you see, these sides is tit for tat and back to back to back to back until they get the big dogs involved, and the big dogs will be Russia, all right? Russia and America, all right? But I'm going to go ahead and close out on this here article. Like I said, you can read through it and see these things going on and about, The Lord willing, this here article was edifying, Lord willing, until next time, I say, call halal Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, double honor to the apostles and elders of great millstone that taught me this truth and that rule well. And salutation and much love for you. I can push in this truth and sincerity in the four corners of the earth. Stay strong. Shalom.